Hey everyone, welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Vinita Belani. Vinita, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nitin. It's such an honor and such a pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. So let's start with who is Vinita?
Oh boy. Okay. Vinita's a computer scientist who makes theater, and in some worlds that makes perfect sense. Vinita's also a nomad. I've lived in 9 different countries across 4 continents, and I speak
Oh,
7 languages from some of those continents. Vinita's a mom and a grandmom, very proudly so. And Vinita is somebody who likes to live life a little maximum.
I love every single one of them, and hopefully we'll get to peel at least a few of those in this conversation. So let's start with what is EnActe? Tell us a little more about why you started it, what's the mission, what's the vision, and I would also love to get a sense for the impact you've been able to create because of that.
Mhm. So, EnActe is a theater company that's co-located in Silicon Valley and in Houston, mostly because the founder, Yannicki Me, is co-located in both these locations. And so I am operating where I live, where I currently live. EnActe, our stated mission is to embrace Eastern and Western methodologies of storytelling and create a contemporary culture of storytelling that puts South Asia into the global context.
Mhm.
So we are essentially an all American theater company that focuses on the South Asian viewpoint with respect to the rest of the world. Our vision really is to bring, firstly, all the richness of the 5, 6 millennia of South Asian culture
Mhm.
into American and of course, global parlance and understanding, but also to draw from it in order to create collaborations with other cultures and see what we can create in terms of culture and understanding in this moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's the big vision.
It sounds very interesting, very fascinating because, as you said, it's 6 millennia of history, culture, ethos, and then as you transition through time, there's also this mix of we are here now, and what does that
Mhm.
mean? And things around us have changed, life has changed. So you live in a very interesting world, and obviously you are a very interesting person. And I don't know which came because of what, but we'll leave that for another day. Tell me
Let me
about.
tell you a little bit about
Oh yeah,
the
please,
impact of EnActe because you asked that part of the question and I didn't
please.
answer it. I think the impact of EnActe, of course, like EnActe, has been growing year on year. Within the community that we actually live in, within 50 miles of where we are, the the notion of EnActe as a theater company has been growing, and we have been very privileged to collaborate with much larger theater companies
Mhm.
that are trying to present South Asian stories or South Asian viewpoints. And I think one of the reasons is because collaboration is a huge part of our DNA.
Mhm.
I always think that one and one, if done correctly, will give us 11 instead of two. And especially in theater, leveraging your resources creates a lot bigger impact. So we are not only just a theater company that produces and presents South Asian content or South Asian flavored content, but we are also now very quickly becoming the theater company that other theater companies, much larger theater companies, go to when they want to present South Asian content and they want to bring in an expert to say, let's do this right, which is very much a post, Me Too, Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
immigration, let's focus on DEI kind of result. But for me, just a fascinating, joyful result that people are actually now wanting to do it right, in the sense that no mainstream theater company is now presenting a story about a South Asia or South Asians that is directed by a white person. They're looking for South Asian directors. And that's what we were aiming for in the 10, almost 11 years that we've been in existence, is to establish that. And I'm really happy to say that we found ourselves in the place now where people say, let's ask and act. So that's our big impact.
That is wonderful, beautiful, and congratulations. And you said it in small words, I would say, but that's a huge thing to do it right and not to just kind of think about the whole South Asian community as that stereotypical, you know, nerdy
Yeah.
kid, dark skinned, doing whatever engineering or medical or what have you, which is what it has been in the past. So thank you for correcting that and fixing that for all of us.
Well,
Now,
I'm not single-handedly responsible, but I'm liking the way the world is moving on that front.
yeah, you have a and I'm sure this will come up. There are some small companies that are starting to work with you, so I'm pretty excited about that and for you to share that. But before we go there, as you transition and help transition the narrative around our community, what's the one big challenge you're facing?
If this is really mundane, the challenge is always money when
Mm,
you're running a nonprofit.
yes.
The big challenge is always money. And yeah, we it's just hard to find a challenge that is bigger than money. The problem that we're trying to solve for is not just to present and stories and our culture and our ourselves as part of a global narrative, but also to create a generation now and then the next generation of talented actors, writers, directors, producers who come from South Asian roots to take their rightful place, say,
Mhm.
on the American stage. Because there's been a chicken and egg when, if
Mhm.
and when opportunities have arisen, there haven't been enough talented people in the pool for the opportunities to either materialize or to grow, even if they do materialize. So to break that vicious cycle has been very much a part of our efforts,
Mhm.
and that is the challenge that we're trying to solve for. But the problem we face most often is funding, and it hasn't been a huge issue for EnActe over 10 years because people have recognized the
Mhm.
value of the work. This year it has actually been a challenge because funding for theater all over the world is drying up,
Yes.
and we are as much victim as the next theater company, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing medium. It's the the value it brings to be
Yeah.
there in the moment, to be
Yeah.
live is unparalleled. But at the same time, as you said, it's also not ingrained in our culture as of today. We
Yes.
are looking for instant gratification. We need everything on our phones and
Yeah.
in close proximity. So
You
it
know, the
is,
other thing that's
yeah.
not the other sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, no,
The
go
other
ahead.
thing that's not in our culture is to give to organizations that don't have uh, to give to nonprofits that operate in America, because so much of our money goes back to much needier causes back home,
Right.
and B, to give to an organizations whose perceived value in the community is so touchy feely.
Yes.
It's not quantifiable. But the truth of the matter is that the work that we do is, somebody said it very well in COVID, that art is medicine for the soul, right?
Love
And
that.
if we as a community cannot nourish and propagate our soul, then we as a community will have a hard time surviving and building a concatenated identity. Yeah.
I agree. And, through this art is also what we are transmitting is education, not
Yes.
just to our own, but to others as to
Yeah.
how to perceive us, how to value us. So I think it gets a little lost in the translation. And also, I think, as you rightly said, yes, there are other causes that are maybe critical, but this is equally important and needs to be talked about, needs to be highlighted, and
Yeah.
needs to be
Yeah.
supported equally, if not less, if not more. So let's talk about the flip side of challenges. I would love to hear what's the most exciting opportunity you are looking at.
Can I talk about a couple?
Please.
We have one opportunity that is actually materializing and will explode in 4 or 5 weeks. We are co presenting the Broadway production of The Kite Runner at Hammer Theater in San Jose, which is a beautiful story because everybody knows The Kite Runner, and the novelist lives in San Jose. The playwright of the production lives in San Jose. The music composer is from Fremont, here in California. And the play was developed in Hammer Theater and it first opened to the world at Hammer Theater. So this is making history.
Mhm.
So this is our present excitement. I'll tell you one past and one future. I just finished directing a play for a company called Perseverance Theater in Alaska. And they are one of the largest, oldest regional theaters in America. And they were doing a play by a South Asian playwright about a South Asian family, and they went looking for a South Asian director. And for me, I'm grateful that they chose me, but I'm fundamentally grateful that they went looking for a South Asian director to direct a South Asian piece, and then said to me, "Do it with as much cultural authenticity as you possibly can."
Yes.
My response, of course, was, "Okay, bring it on." I'm,
Yeah.
going everything from the Ganesha idol to big Bollywood wedding with fat Jaymalas. The show had it all. It's called A Nice Indian Boy by Madhuri Shekhar. I think the most exciting opportunity that is coming up for EnActe, it's just this opening up of dialogue with so many theater companies. There is a place called Bucks County Playhouse in New York that we are now collaborating with. They ran a South Asian content playwriting competition, and the top three plays that have now been picked and that they're going into production, and EnActe is their collaborator, and I get to go direct one of the plays in the development read, and then EnActe gets its pick of what play they want to produce from the three that have won the top three slots in the competition. And Rajiv Joseph, who is the darling of Broadway, is the curator of this competition, and he gets to direct one play, and I get to direct one. So for me, it's very satisfying as an artist to be able to do that. But I think also the fact that a very traditionally Western constructed theater company in upstate New York decided to do this and is realizing the value of reaching out to certain communities and saying, we recognize that your voice is a little different and that it must be heard. And I get to be part of that process, and I hope it happens over and over again.
Well, congratulations. Very well deserved. And yes, I agree with you. It needs to happen more. And I do believe with you leading this, it will. So, really happy.
Well, I'm glad somebody has faith in me. Sometimes my faith in myself rocks a little bit. It just goes.
No, I see no reason why that should be the case. But
I'll tell you why. Because it. Some people think that this is a very glamorous job. It is
yes.
the hardest job I have done in my life, and I've done some tough ones. Try bringing up kids when you're moving every other year from Indonesia to Nigeria, or Yeah, I've done some strange things in life, but this is hard because it's 647 minor problems that you have to solve in a day and maybe 10 major problems. And the number of problems just never decreases, and there's just never enough money to solve them in the way that they should be solved. So, yeah, they say theater is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, like most other creative things.
And with
And then there's all the people, all the drama between the people. What you see on stage is probably 10% of all the drama that you see. That you don't get to see. But it's very fulfilling, very satisfying, very fulfilling.
well,
Yeah.
I can imagine that. Otherwise, someone like you who could have done so many other things wouldn't stick around to do this. Again, thank you for doing what you do. It's extremely important and we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Now, let's, as we look forward on what's to come, let's take a moment and look back in the rearview mirror. And I would love for you to share two moments. One, where things did not work out as you had expected, it became a failure, and there was maybe a lesson that was learned. And another one that blew your expectations, became a success beyond your imagination.
Hmm. Can I reverse the order? Can I talk
Sure.
about the big one first? So this is actually the story of how EnActe was started, and I still haven't been able to match up to that first big beginning. So I was living in Paris. I was working in technology consulting with Capgemini. I was a senior vice president working on small and medium business, technology solutions for small and medium businesses, traveling around Europe. And I went to dinner at a friend's house and I met this gentleman called Jean-Claude Carrière, a longtime theater making partner of Peter Brook. And for people who don't know him, he is the playwright who wrote the Mahabharata, which
Mhm.
Peter Brook directed, which became this seminal moment in theatrical history in the 80s. And, it came to BAM in New York. I
Mhm.
mean, it was a 9-hour play.
Yeah.
It was the first time a Westerner had actually taken the time, 11 years to be precise, to study the Mahabharata and write it in a format that Western people could understand and appreciate, you know, dissociating it from all the cultural moorings that make it so hard to understand. So he's iconic, this person. And I couldn't believe I was sitting next to him at the friend's house having dinner. And I very jokingly said to him, I said, it's been 20 years since the Mahabharata was done. We should do it again. And he said, we should absolutely do it. Do you have a theater company? And I said, no, no, but if you want to do it, I'll start a theater company. I mean, I have a theater background on the side.
Sure.
So I wasn't entirely joking. And there was a lot of haha. And then that night I couldn't sleep. And the next morning I called my friend and I said, give me Jean Claude's phone number. And I talked to him. And to cut a long story short, over a couple of lunches, we decided that he was actually going to do a one-man version of the Mahabharata as a lead up to maybe bringing the show back.
Mhm.
So I quit my job. I started the theater company. We brought Jean Claude to America, where I'd started the theater company. And for a year and a half, we just toured America with a, a show called The Modern Vyasa,
Mhm.
in which a Frenchman told the story of the Mahabharata in English to American
Wow.
audiences.
That's so cool.
And the first show opened at the Menil Collection in the foyer, and the program director had put out 100 chairs and said, I think that will be enough. And they sold 300. It was by RSVP because it was a free program. They sold 300 tickets, so they had to add more
Wow.
chairs, more shows. And that's how it went on. At the end of the year and a half, Jean Claude Carrière was given an Oscar for lifetime achievement in script writing for film. And he invited me to go along. So, I started a theater company and ended up at the Oscars with a lifetime script writer. Who can imagine that? I've never been able to replicate that kind of success in the 10 years that followed. But it did ratify my faith in good things happen. You just have
Mhm.
to work for it. Yeah.
That's
Now,
a
for a
beautiful story.
spectacular failure, we did a play on the partition, which was an incredible play written, beautifully written. Every show was sold out. It was a 2 hour play. People cried their guts out. It was, everything was beautiful about that play. I just hadn't gotten my contracts straight because I had operated on trust because it was a nonprofit making art, and you tend to trust people implicitly that way. And there were two playwrights, and one of the playwrights said, "No, the play is all mine, and you can't." It just got really messy in terms
Mhm.
of who owned the play. And so, what was supposed to be a multi-city run and many shows, we had to close after 4 shows because it, we ran into issues about who actually owned the play.
Hmm.
It was commissioned by us and it was paid for by us, but I hadn't got my contract straight. I was still learning the business. So now I do contracts even with people I trust. With Jean Claude, I didn't have a single contract, nothing on paper. It was just all conversation, and it worked. Sometimes it doesn't work.
We live and learn.
We live and learn. Yes, it was a huge learning in that no matter how much you trust somebody, your first conversation has to be about roles, responsibilities, and an MOU or a contract needs to go into place. Otherwise, the project doesn't move forward. Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you for being open and transparent about that. These moments are not very, I guess, they challenge us in many ways. So thank you for being open and vulnerable so others can learn from this and hopefully not make the same mistakes. So really appreciate you sharing that. Now, on to better things. What do you do for fun? I mean, you live in a very fun world. So I would love to hear what's your de stress and what's your go to when you have to kick things back and just enjoy.
My husband tells people Vinita reads instead of sleeping. She doesn't need sleep, she needs read. So I read a lot of books. My Kindle told me I read 124 books last year. That was just on the
Wow.
Kindle. So I'm a voracious reader, and that is my okay, I can just get rid of my world and go into someone else's world. So that is fun number one on a daily basis. Fun number two is I'm a grandmother now. So I get to spend time with the grandchildren. It is the best club in the world to belong to. Everybody should aspire to belong to this club. When you're with your grandchildren, nothing else matters. That is definitely fun. Yeah, I like to go dancing with friends. That's a lot of fun. I have fun at work when I'm in the creative process, when people come together. If you think about it, theater is the only art that you cannot make solo. You
True.
can paint for yourself, you can dance for yourself, you can sing for yourself. But theater, by definition, you are performing for someone. So
Mhm.
there have to be two people in the room. It's what you said earlier about theater. It's immediate, there's a connection, there's human energy that floats around whatever it is that you're doing. And the rush that you get from that and the amount of human insight that you get from that, it's a very heady drug. So yes, I am now in my third career. And this career is, part of it is definitely fun.
Yeah, as you said, it's the most challenging, but I would imagine the most fulfilling at the same time.
I think that's why people get crazy and do theater. Theater, as a business makes zero sense. I mean, if a VC were to look at our books, they would say, "Are you crazy?" And I would have to say, "Yeah."
And you do live around a bunch of them, so you're in the
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in in the
yeah.
eyes of constant storm, I would imagine.
Yes, I have to constantly own up to my craziness. I mean, the flip side of it is that, a lot of people who are in the tech world and who see me either as a abdicated technologist or a failed technologist aren't terribly impressed by my career at all, my new career. But, each to his own, right? So,
I live vicariously through you. So you get to do all of this fun stuff, be creative,
yeah.
create your own
Yeah.
dream and
Yeah.
space. So
1%. The rest of it is just.
eh, you're built for that. I couldn't handle it.
I mean, look at what you're doing now. I couldn't handle that.
Oh,
So, yeah.
on to my favorite part of the show. We call it the one
Okay.
line life lessons. We'd love to
Hmm.
hear your one line life lessons.
My one line life lesson. My one line life lesson is the only way to learn is to do something you have no idea how to do. And that's the best way to learn. Yeah. It requires a little bit of faith in yourself, but I think everybody needs to inculcate that faith in themselves and say, oh, I'm going to do this. I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'll learn. That's how you get onto third careers and learn to do contracts. Yeah. My, I think my big other one liner would be learn to love what other people are about, you know, because I've been very privileged. Like I said, I lived in 9 different countries across 4 different continents. The only continent I haven't lived in is Australia. And I've moved into homes in fairly challenging situations. And I have found love and support and camaraderie in the most fascinating of places. You just have to be open to seeing good rather than thinking about negatives. I was going to say, and this is going to sound a little braggy, but I'm going to give myself the right to say this. I have a friend who's a budding playwright, and I've been very supportive, and we've done some of their work. And she tells me that my superpower is finding the power in other people and enabling it. And I consider that a privilege.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And I can see that. I agree with her. So, Vinita, thank you so much for making the time to be with us, to share your journey and story, and for more importantly, being you and helping bring this important work to life. As you said, theater is not easy, but it's extremely important. And thanks for setting the context, driving us in the right direction, for bringing our voice, for bringing our culture to the fore and into the mainstream. Really happy and excited about what's coming next with Broadway and with many other partnerships that you have in play. And we'd love to bring you back on and talk about more of your successes here in the near future.
Inshallah, as they say. Thank you so much for having me, Nitin, for deeming me worthy of being on this very
Uh,
exalted show, and for a potential invitation back. I'll have to work very hard to earn that next spot. But
Vinita,
I
you're
will
so
try to
kind.
make it happen.
You're so kind, so humble. I love what you do, and it'd
Thank
be
you.
our pleasure to have you back on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you for the opportunity.